Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Iskon Gurvinda ki, Shri Prabhupad ki, Antarad Srimad Bhagvatam ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Is there anything on the Vaishnav calendar today? Bhishmashtami, the appearance anniversary of Bhishmadev, the grandfather of the Pandavas. Bhishmadev was the son of Maharaj Santanu and Gangadevi. When his father later wanted to marry Satyavati, Bhishmadev took a vow never to marry. So Satyavati's son could inherit the father's kingdom. He lived in the court of Dhritarashtra, so he felt obliged to take Duryodhana's side in the battle of Kurukshetra. He wanted to see Krishna fight, so he attacked Arjuna very ferociously. Krishna, despite his vow not to take up weapons in the battle, grabbed the wheel of a chariot and attacked Bhishmadev, thus breaking his own promise to fulfill his pure devotee's desire. Bhishmadev died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He lay on a bed of arrows for months, and finally, after instructing Maharaj Yudhishthira on religious principles, he passed away at his own wish in the presence of Lord Krishna. Bhishmadev is one of the 12 Mahajans, great religious authorities. Shri Bhishmadev ki jai. So if anybody remembers, just thanks. Just a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about a particular observance on the calendar. What was that again? It was on a Sunday. Makar Sankranti. Yeah. So when they said that Bhishmadev lay in the battlefield for months, apparently he had a benediction that he would only die when he wanted to, so he waited for that particular date and then he left his body. Okay, reading from Nectar of Devotion, Introduction. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by a person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. One who is serious about spiritual life is given by Krishna the intelligence to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, and then by the grace of the spiritual master one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. Does anybody know it? You probably heard us quote it. Brahmanda Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhaktilata Bij. So the word Brahmanda in Sanskrit means the universe. And Jeev refers to the soul, the individual soul. Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhaktilata Bij means that by the mercy of Krishna one gets a guru, and by the mercy of Guru one gets the seed of pure devotion. And this is granted after the living entities wandering through different species of life, and in their heart and mind they start to desire how to get out of this world. What's this world all about? Who am I? Why am I here? All these existential questions. Then Krishna within the heart directs them to find out the answers. In this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. This has nothing to do with the material world. When we speak of Krishna, we refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead along with his many expansions. He is expanded by his plenary parts and parcels, his differentiated parts and parcels, and his different energies. Krishna, in other words, means everything and includes everything. Generally, however, we should understand Krishna to mean Krishna and his personal expansions. Krishna expands himself as Baladev, Sankarshan, Vasudeva, Anuruddha, Pradyumna, Rama, Nrsimha, and Varaha, as well as many other incarnations and innumerable Vishnu expansions. These are described in Srimad Bhagvatam to be as numerous as the uncountable waves. So Krishna includes all such expansions as well as his pure devotees. In the Brahma Samhita it is stated that Krishna's expansions are all complete in eternity, blissfulness, and cognizance. Shri Nectar of the Ocean Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 7, Chapter 5. Entitled Prahlad, the Saintless Son of Hiranyakashipu, text 38. Sarvair, Upayayar, Hantavya. Sarvair Upayayar, Hantavya. Samboja, Shayanasanai. Samboja, Shayanasanai. Dara Shatur Surlinga Dara Shatur Munir Dushtam Vivendriyam Dushtam Vivendriyam Samboja Shayanasanai Surilinga Tarashakur Sarvai Sarvai Adara Shatu Gunadushtam Gandhiyam Sarvai by all Ukayai means Antavya must be killed. Just as uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis engaged in advancing in spiritual life, this Prahlad, who appears to be a friend, is an enemy because I cannot control him. Therefore, this enemy, whether eating, sitting, or sleeping, must be killed by all means. Planned the campaign to kill Prabhupad. He would kill his son by administering thousands of or by throwing him under the feet of an elephant while he was lying down. Thus Hiranyakashipu decided to kill his innocent child, who was only 5 years old, simply because the boy just as uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis and the advancing in spiritual life. We see here in the three methods that Hiranyakashipu tried to kill Prabhupad by. Many methods he engaged, but because in the verse it says his enemy, whether eating, sitting, or sleeping, should be killed. example on him. Back in those days, they did it in tanks. They had elephants, and they were trained in battle. And sometimes before the battle, they'd get the because Krishna was in the heart of the elephant didn't stand on it. Krishna is within the atom, and as we were reading in Nectar of Devotion there, that Krishna is actually in everything. He is himself first and foremost. Krishna means Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, also means his expansions or his plenary portions. Does anybody know what plenary portion means? Yeah. So even though the Lord expands in many different ways, then it's not that Krishna becomes less or the expansions are less. Krishna may have some qualities and pastimes, etc., that some of the other expansions don't have. But they're also so even though he expands in his plenary portions and as a parts and parcels of jivas like this, and as into energies, separate energies, so Krishna is present everywhere. So the pure devotion has alone. Just like one man said to Prabhupada on the process if someone asks you such a question, they're not going to accept your answer. If you say yes, then they're just going to doubt you. The reporter says yes, I accept your answer. And this way, you can understand the idea that for those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, give the understanding by which they have a material qualification, not that they have to be so well educated. But one through simple devotion, even illiterate person can realize God fully by the mercy of God in the heart that he reveals himself. And there's many examples of persons who become very great scholars in the Vedic literature. They realize what stuff is behind it. He's called Vedavada, means that he follows. So they spend a lot of time doing this, and sometimes what happens is they become very proud of their learning and it becomes a distraction. So we also have to be careful that we don't become proud if we learn something from these passionate lecturers and we think that we're better than other people. We think we're better than other people, we think we're better than non-devotees. Nobody's better than anyone else. We're all equal in the eyes of God. And that example was given when we were going to Sri Lanka, and there was a little spider threw some grains of sand in the ocean and endeavoured to help him to float. The Lord says, no, I accept his service. If Hanuman was to take a grain of sand and throw it in the ocean, then that wouldn't be accepting his service. That's the way to do more. The poor man gives Krishna £1. I welcome him to Krishna £1 is it. Krishna doesn't always see both. And Krishna doesn't need anything from us. Krishna comes to win you only back to Krishna. Krishna says whatever we eat, we offer to him. Because whatever we eat is stated here, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. This is what means by love. That you find out what a person likes and what they don't like, and you act according to that. If you say you love someone but you do things which annoy them all the time, then you love yourself more, don't you? If someone says, can you stop doing that? You're really driving me around the twist. No, just prove your love for me by tolerating me and let me just annoy you. So, of course, it's not that Krishna is annoyed, but there are certain things which are, there is right and wrong, and there are things which are favourable for a relationship with Krishna and things which are unfavourable. If you do things which are unfavourable, then how can you expect to get Krishna wants us 10 times at the same time. Everything we have to take. Skin disease we're talking about is thinking that we have to look in the mirror and see the body, which is a combination of bones, muscles, fat, something called a heart transplant, some organ transplant. They still remain, of course, there seems to be some kind of karmic transition there as well. Sometimes people are affected by these different organs and are transplanted. So in any case, when the tried to kill the lad, no matter what he did, and he was trying to Krishna in fear, He said in the Buddhist so although Hiranyakshipu tried everything, Raki Krishna Mariki, that Krishna wants to protect you, nobody can kill you. And at the same time, Hiranyakashipu tried everything to become immortal himself. Before he came to power, he performed great austerities. Now, when we talk about demons, we don't talk about people who are just some kind of like small-time atheistic demons we have nowadays. But these people knew the Vedas and they utilised the Vedas to increase their power, would get mystic powers, etc., and they would abuse them so that they could become the supreme. This was his goal, to be the supreme, not answerable to anybody. This is what people want, isn't it? Just like when Prabhupada went to Japan to discuss with Dai Nippon about printing, publishing the books, and when the CEO left the office, then his understudy was still there, and Prabhupada said to the man, "What's your ambition?" And he took his business card and he put it on top of the boss's business card. He wanted to be the top dog. But you know, as soon as you're the top dog, then someone else wants to be the There's always this competition going on. And this is called envy.
I don't have it. He has a good house, but I don't have a good house. He has a good car. I have a less good car.
So we went to supervise the transporting of the frogs, and we put them in an open container on the boat. We live in it, and they escape. As soon as one frog tries to climb out, another tries to climb out at the same time, and this is going on the whole time. They're just throwing each other down, so nobody could escape. So this is a very good description of the tour there. You want to get to the top, something you're going to come through. As soon as you get anywhere near it, step out and someone goes down and be in their place, and someone wants to pull us down. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is, as I mentioned earlier on in the preparation, try to enjoy this material. So they could enjoy again. They were such big enjoyers. Then eating wasn't enough. They had to throw it up and then do it again. They had these servants which would come around with a feather and a bucket, and then so very high class. They would just throw up and then continue eating. I'm sure that wasn't good for the health. any such desire to enjoy unlimited laser. It's not natural because but when you constrict it down into the body, then you have bones, the body is limited. But when we connect to this higher energy, the Prana, Prakriti, the two energies known as the Apara, Prakriti, or the inferior energy, and the superior spiritual energy known as Para, Prakriti. So when we connect, because we're also Para, we're spiritual. So when the spiritual energy is trying to go into two energies, yes, one sort of knowledge extension type of things. So, the meaning of life is to enjoy, but you do not know how to enjoy. That's the problem. It's called Maya. We take our suffering to be enjoyment. It's a moment of time. I remember as a young lad, I picked up suffering. And I thought, okay, I can stop this anytime. I was never much interested in smoking. And you think, well, what's going on in your lungs if that's what's happening outside? You can't redecorate your lungs every year. So even though I could see that it was wasn't a very nice situation, it was moochy, it was unclean, it led to suffering, so much disease, but still my desire to enjoy was there. And I tried it due to association of a friend who was doing it. Then he convinced me to try it. And I said no many times, but then I gave in. And then I thought, I can do this when I like, I can give it up when I like. But after a little while, I couldn't give it up. And it was very difficult to give up. And of course, to begin with, you get a little bit of, a dizzy spell or some kind of buzz from it. But after a while, you don't get anything. You just actually have to do it to maintain. We develop a certain mentality, which is reflected in a certain type of species of life. Like Srila Prabhupada says, if one wants to have like unrestricted sex life, what's going on? There's just so much attention going on over here. Everybody needs. What's that? It's an acharya. In the Sanskrit, the opposite of something, you put an A in front of it. So, and I play with words. Acharya means one who teaches by example. So anyway, so I don't know what I was saying there. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so the subtle body is formed according to the activities we have in this life, and then simple at the time of death, whatever we take shelter in is that which we're most attached to, naturally, because we take shelter in it throughout our life. So at the time of death, we try to take shelter in that, but it's not there because it was actually illusory. it couldn't provide real shelter. But if we learn to take shelter in Krishna, then at the time of death, then Krishna will be there. Krishna is present everywhere. Of course, we're taking shelter in Krishna in the material energy as well, but the result is different. Taking shelter in Krishna in the spiritual energy and material energy is not the same result. And we see here that Prahlad, he took shelter in Krishna, and Krishna decided no matter how much Hiranyakashipu tries to kill Prahlad, he's getting nowhere with it. And no matter how much Hiranyakashipu tries to protect himself with all the benedictions he got from Brahma, such as he could not be killed in the land or in the sky. What else? What other benedictions did he get? He could not what? In the 12 months. No, yeah, I don't remember that. Is that right? So when did he die? At the junction between both. Oh, the extra month. I got you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What else did he? Indoors or outdoors? What else? So he considered any conceivable way that you could be killed, and then he got all his bases covered. But Krishna is so intelligent that he could still kill Hiranyakashipu and keep Lord Brahma's promises intact. Like you were saying, Purushottam Mas, the month. So he said he couldn't be killed in any of the 12 months. So Krishna created another month. Couldn't be killed in the land or in the sky. He was on the lap of the Supreme Lord. He was neither on the ground or in the air. Indoors or outdoors, he was in the threshold of the property. He was neither in nor out. It's just like if you fall off a bike, where were you when you fell off? Were you on the bike or were you on the ground? You're in between. Yeah, and day or night, it was in the twilight. So he covered all these things. So this is an indication to us also that we cannot outsmart God. We cannot outsmart death. There was some atheistic scholars met with Srila Prabhupada, and they were trying to. They heard Prabhupada spoke, and then they said, "Actually, we don't believe in God." And Prabhupada just laughed at them. He said, "You may not believe in God. That does not mean He does not exist. But for you, God will come as death, take everything away." And then Prabhupada was laughing. Take everything away, and this is what happens. If we don't see that there is a supreme proprietor, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatvam Shantim Richati. So Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Sarva means all, Loka means planets or worlds, Maheshwaram, Maha, great, Ishvara, controller. So we all have a little ability to control, but that person who has the supreme control of everything, then that is the Supreme Lord, Krishna. And he has control over everything, but yet he gives us some little control. Because another aspect of Krishna is that he's the most detached. Usually, see, if someone's a big controller, they're not very detached, are they? They're very attached to having their own way. Everything's got to be their way. But Krishna, although he's the supreme controller, then he's also... Just give me a second. Although he's the supreme controller, then he's not attached to being the controller. But there's nobody else who can do that. So if we look at, there's the three main deities. We have Lord Brahma, who's considered to be the creator, and Lord Shiva, the destroyer. Now, Lord Brahma is generally Jiva Tattva, or an individual soul like you or I. But he's specifically empowered by Krishna for the purpose of creation. And we read that in the Srimad Bhagvatam. The process of creation, how the gross comes from the subtle. It's interesting because in the Bible they have this thing also, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, blah, blah, blah. And it's a very kind of rudimentary explanation, but when you look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains how the sound vibration tapa was heard by Brahma. He performed austerities, and through that, then he learned how to make the creation from the subtle to the gross. Just like if you decide you want to build a garden shed, then in your mind you'll conceive of it. First of all, it's existing on the subtle platform. You'll think about it. You might make a drawing. You get the materials and then you build it. So from the subtle comes the gross. So similarly, the material creation is starting from the subtle platform, and basically comes from our desire. Like one devotee asked Prabhupada, why did Krishna create the material world? Prabhupada said, Krishna didn't create it, you created it. So in other words, it's there because we wanted it. And Prabhupada explains in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the material world is here for our ability to attempt to enjoy. No, it's there as an opportunity for us to enjoy separately from Krishna, because we wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. We wanted to try to be a little God, go on our own. And in doing so, we experience frustration because we're not the supreme controller. We don't have that capacity. We're part and parcel of Krishna. And when we realize that we are like a fish out of water, and we realize where we really belong, then we can become happy in our natural state. Then we don't need all the trappings of the material world. So these were the lessons Prahlad Maharaj was giving to his classmates at school. He was telling them, you spend so many years in education, and then you spend so many years in family life, and then the remainder you spend as an invalid, getting old, and at the end, of your life, you wasted the life. So of course, there's more details to it than that, but basically, he was telling them this is the best time. As soon as you become aware of spiritual life, the best time to take advantage of it is as soon as you become aware. I remember also, personally speaking, many years ago when I came in contact with Krishna consciousness, I realized that if I don't cut my ties, then I may lose this consciousness, and then I may come to the end of my life thinking, oh, I wish I'd done that. And better to not have that type of regret. So the first line of this verse, just as uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis engaged in advancing the spiritual life. So if one's senses are uncontrolled, then we can't advance in spiritual life. And for the yogis, then they have a very strict discipline where they'll sit in a certain pose. Generally, they get into Padmasana, and they block off different orifices, and they perform meditation. They deny themselves certain distractions of the senses, etc. But if they give into one of these things, then they have to start the process again. Ultimately, their goal is to reach samadhi, where their consciousness is fixed unwaveringly. But the devotees of Krishna conscious movement, they're following Bhakti Yoga, which has got the added advantage of, just like, say you're catching a flight and you might be a bit late. There's a long walkway, so you could just walk, or you see this moving walkway, right? You get on that and you just feel like, oh, this is great. A couple of steps and I'm moving like 50 yards. So Krishna helping us in Bhakti Yoga is the difference between that and just going on your own. You get there easier and quicker. Because Krishna is personally helping us, he makes arrangements for our advancement. And also, if we make some mistake, then we get back on the path and we carry on. much as the example of the boy who came last in the race. He had some kind of disability where he kept on falling over, but each time he fell over, then he got up and he carried on. Although everyone had finished the race long before him, at the finishing line, then everybody was applauding him more than even those who won it, because he put in such effort that no matter how many times he fell, then he got back up and continued the rest of the race. Of course, that doesn't mean to say, oh great, I'll fall as much as I like, as long as I just carry on, because that can create a bad consciousness, bad habit, where we may not carry on. So Hiranyakashipu was considering Prahlad an enemy because he couldn't control him, which is contrary to spiritual understanding. Sometimes Prahlad was also teaching this, that there is no such thing as friends and enemies. We try to see lessons in everything. Someone may appear to be an enemy, but what is that lesson? It may be a tougher lesson, and that person who's your enemy may give you a better lesson than your friends could. Not that we look forward to that, but sometimes life provides that. Even sometimes, due to karma, an enemy is born into your own family to give you some trouble, because perhaps you created trouble for that person in the last life. Now you have to serve them. You have to put up with them. Karma is very difficult, intricate. And Krishna says we shouldn't try to understand it because it's too intricate. So even though Hiranyakashipu decided he was going to kill Prahlad, he may have decided something, but Krishna decided something else. And if our desires are linked with Krishna, then they will come true. Krishna will help. But if Krishna is taking us under our shelter and we want something which is not good for us, then Krishna won't give it. Or he'll give it in such a way that we want to give it up. But this is the nature of material sense gratification. Everything has to be favorable to their particular flavor of sense gratification. And we see that sometimes you get some very wealthy people who actually are unqualified to have that wealth because they become like spoiled brats. And people are just disposable, or they, they squander so much. But like Srila Prabhupada said, if you give me $1 million in the morning, I'll spend it in the afternoon. I'll spend it by the afternoon, because you spend it all for Krishna. So the devotee doesn't see anything as his; he sees it as Krishna's and use it in Krishna's service. I remember Kripa Mahaprabhu was saying, okay, you've experienced some difficulty in life. What are you going to do when you experience success? That's another challenge, isn't it? The challenge is there in difficulty, but challenge can be there in success as well. How many people fall victim to success? And therefore Krishna says that we should have to tolerate happiness and distress. Don't just tolerate distress. When we're suffering, we think, I need to learn to tolerate this. And when we're happy or some good fortunes there, we don't think, I need to learn to tolerate this. We just think, let me enjoy. But if we cannot tolerate happiness, then distress will equally affect us. So this is the thing, is to understand that everything has a beginning, has an end. So if some misfortune or apparent misfortune comes, that will pass, and there may be some lesson. If some good fortune comes, we should know also that will pass. That has its limits. So just like sometimes gamblers, they go on a losing streak and then on a winning streak. When they're on a winning streak, they keep going until they lose it all. So we shouldn't gamble with this human form of life. Take on these teachings of Bhagavad Gita, apply them in our life, and we'll see how it affects us. It makes us more stable. And when even when the going is good, then we practice Krishna consciousness very strictly, so that when the going is tough, then we're already trained up for it. just like in a marathon. You may not be running a marathon every day, and it may be planned for 6 months down the road, but you train for it so when the marathon comes, you're ready to go. Or if you're in martial arts, you think, well, I don't have to fight today or tomorrow, it's 6 months' time, I'll leave it till then. But when the fight comes, you're not prepared. So similarly with Krishna consciousness, we keep our practices intact so that when the difficult times are there, we're able to ride the storm and we come through at the other end. Stay steady in our practices, whatever comes and goes. And it's interesting because we can sometimes see a bit of ourself in Hiranyakashipu. I'm not saying that any of you do, but I do. I see a bit of a demon of myself in Hiranyakashipu. Uncontrolled senses. We see someone who doesn't align with us as being an enemy. We make friends or enemies. But ultimately, everybody's eternal part and parcel of Krishna. And this enmity of the material world, it doesn't exist in the spiritual world. And so we have to try to see beyond friends and enemies. And a good way to, personally I've found a good way to deal with that is if you pray for them. If someone is doing something which is, as far as you can understand, it isn't correct, causing you harm, causing others harm, then you can pray to Krishna that they may see some light on their path and change their ways. Or you can pray that you can learn to tolerate them and see some good in them. Because the devotee tries to see the good in everyone. Even someone may have so many bad qualities, then the devotee still sometimes tries to see the good. Okay, we'll just stop there. Has anyone got any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. Prabhu, when we saw Purport today, it mentioned that how Hiranyakashipu tried to boil Prahlad Maharaj in the oil and tried to kill him in many other ways. So how can we create this tolerance within us to forgive somebody because leave boiling in hot oil? If somebody tries to come and slap me, I would be running to police station to put them in jail. So what is the mindset of Prahlad Maharaj that he's able to forgive his father even though he's trying to kill him in so many ways?
Yeah, so if you read the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj to his schoolmates, you see that's his mindset. His mindset was also one of great compassion, even to his father. He was compassionate toward him. Now, Prahlad Maharaj, he didn't want to, although he was a pure devotee, he didn't want to escape to some country ashram to live a nice life amongst the birds and the bees in the forest. He wanted to go to the city where everybody was suffering so he could give this spiritual knowledge to them. So we follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj by doing the compassionate thing, then we will learn. Just like you set the temperature in the temple to a certain degrees. If it's 1 or 2 degrees less or more, then we're like, oh, what's this? I can't tolerate this. We can't even tolerate one slight adjustment. But if you go on the street and you're selling books, like we go on the street, we sell Bhagavad Gita, etc., then you're putting yourself in a situation where very soon you're going to develop the mood of Prahlad Maharaj, because to continue to do that, despite the fact that the weather is not favourable at times, or there's many temptations there, or people are rude to you, or worse, or you may not be feeling up to it that day, or your mind might be freaking out. But just to continue doing it despite all these things means that you're beginning to transcend all these things. When the mind's freaked out because you've got a cold, it's raining, and everyone's telling you where to go, and you continue doing it, that's you transcending. So transcending doesn't mean to say one morning you wake up and you get out of bed and your feet aren't touching the ground any longer. And you don't have to take a shower any longer because you smell like roses. It's not something magical like that. But it's a very practical thing. So to learn to tolerate means we put ourselves in a situation where we have to tolerate. So we recite this verse every day, Trinada Pisane, to become more tolerant than the tree. So how can we be more tolerant than the tree? The tree is very tolerant, isn't it? It stands out there in all weathers. Sometimes it doesn't get water for a long time. Sometimes it gets nothing but water. It can be cold, it can be too hot. People might cut bits off of it. It might stick things on it. So it has to tolerate so much. So how can we be more tolerant in the tree? Any idea? Are you going to answer, or are you just playing? I wasn't sure if you're preparing for an answer by switching the microphone on. We were pausing there. Anybody get any idea? There's one thing which makes us, or gives opportunity to be more tolerant in the tree, is that the tree doesn't have any choice. The tree is put there because of its past life. It gets to be a tree. It can't say, "Oh, to heck with this, I'm off. I'm not staying in Scotland, it's too wet. I'm going somewhere drier." It's stuck. It has to tolerate. Whereas we make the choice to put ourselves in a situation where we have to learn to tolerate. We can do it by choice. We're using that choice. And Krishna says that human life is meant for tapasya, austerity, so we're voluntarily accepting austerities. And by doing that, like even materially, without discipline, one doesn't achieve anything. So the discipline in devotional life means that we will get Krishna's favor.
How can we be more tolerant than tree? One of the things is like tree, it gives shade, it gives fruits, and so many other things, and doesn't like shout when being cut and disturbed. So some other person, if we can see, we will find that okay, there is some good in this other person. There is definitely something better in him than I have, or something to learn from here and there. Sort of, then maybe I can learn to be more tolerant.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see the good in them. Even if they don't see the good in us, we can see the good in them. And that's by seeing the good in others, we get the good qualities. If they see the bad in us, they get the bad qualities. So we should concern ourselves with our development. And it's not a selfish thing, because the more spiritually advanced we become, the more good we can do for other people. We don't consider, even though it's a strange phenomenon, even though self-realization is about advancing ourselves, then it actually means we're thinking less of ourselves. We're not putting ourselves first. And yeah, you're right. The tree is actually, we can learn so much. The tree is giving shade. We have to learn how to take shade ourselves, and how to give shade, how to give shelter, how to give the tree is given so much service. It gives leaves, just like in a couple of months' time, some of these trees will give leaves, and you can take them and put them in a salad, like a beech. And when they're young and fresh, you can put them in a salad. They're very nutritious, things like that. And everything has a purpose in life. So they're providing so much service, so we also can provide service. And don't, when things are going wrong, learn not to protest. A tree doesn't protest when someone's cutting it. You can say, "Oh, well, it can't," but or we don't hear it. Maybe it does, and we just don't hear it. But from the human perspective, we don't see it protesting. So the lesson is to accept things as our karmic reaction. And then the karmic reaction is gone. If we protest, then we're holding on to that, and we have to keep going through it again and again. And rather than just remaining silent, then we take shelter in Krishna. Because taking shelter in Krishna means that we don't just tolerate it, but we tolerate without being disturbed, because we develop a higher understanding. So we get these lessons regularly, where sometimes we are disturbed. So we have to learn. Some things disturb us, some things don't disturb us so much. Okay, anything else?
What is Hiranyakashipu's view of advancing in spiritual life? Like here he's mentioning, in the translation we see uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis in advancing. So what is his concept of spiritual life and advancement?
It's a good question, because you think, well, if he considers himself to be the supreme, what does he think this is? I wondered about that myself, actually. But sometimes this is the case also, that demons even know what is the right path, the path of liberation, etc., but they just they don't care for it. So what his idea of spiritual life is, I can't say. Does anyone else have an idea? Maybe some kind of impersonalistic thing? Because he certainly wouldn't consider Vishnu to be the supreme, because Vishnu was his enemy.
Can it be something like, as you mentioned before, like for example, if you see in today's world, some sadhaka comes to temple, lives in temple for a while, understand Krishna consciousness, and he's like, oh, it's not for me. And then he goes again out in the world, in like trying to enjoy the material world. He understands Krishna as supreme personality of Godhead, but he's like, I can't be bothered to go to temple, pray, chant, something like that.
Could be. But also bear in mind that Hiranyakashipu knew the Vedas because he knew how to perform austerities and get the benedictions he wanted. So sometimes people think elevation to higher planets is a spiritual thing. He wanted to be access to all planets, access all areas without any restriction. He wanted that freedom. And even the yogis, they do this to get to higher planetary systems within the material world, where they have longer lifespan, they can enjoy with greater capacity, etc. But if you see the end of the purport, Prabhupada said, this is the attitude of non-devotees toward devotees, that even Prahlad Maharaj was an innocent boy of 5 years old, and his demoniac father wanted to extinguish him because he was a pest. He was a nuisance. So this is a demoniac mentality, and the attitude of non-devotees toward devotees. And we've seen that on many occasions, we've experienced being assaulted on the streets ourselves, and we've seen our our friends or devotees in other parts of the world who get persecuted, etc., because people don't want that way of life. And there was one, back in the 70s, there was one senator tried to bring the government's attention to the Krishna consciousness movement, saying it was a danger to their society. And it came to the attention, but they weren't taking him seriously, because they're thinking, these shaven-headed guys in orange robes jumping about, ringing bells, we shouldn't take them too seriously. And then Prabhupada says, yes, this is good, because by the time they do take it seriously, it'll be too late. Because when the people become Krishna conscious, when they become spiritually realized, then when that light is switched on, then you don't switch it back off. Even if the material position doesn't change, when the consciousness is elevated to understand what is spirit, what is matter, then no amount of material opposition can put that out. So as people become more and more spiritually inclined, then the governments will have to cater to that, because basically what they're doing, they look to see what's vox populi, what are the public looking for, and then it's like supply and demand, isn't it? So although Kali Yuga is, and there's so many terrible things going on in the world, there are other good things going on simultaneously, like the rise in vegetarianism, animal protection, things like that, equal rights, protecting people's rights, etc. Which means it's easier for us to do this. If there was no right to do this, some countries you couldn't speak like this, you'd get arrested, you get put in jail, put to death. So we have some freedom here to do that, so we'll take advantage of it where we can. I think we have to stop. It's going on a bit. So thanks very much. It's going Guru Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.